Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar organized by Smart Infraco under the theme Data Sovereignty and Trust, Keeping Ghanaian Data in Ghana. My name is Richard, Sales and Commercial Manager here at Smart Infraco, and I'm delighted to be your moderator for this important discussion. Today, we'll be exploring one of the most pressing issues in our digital transformation journey: how Ghana can maintain control, security, and trust in its data by keeping it within our national borders. As Ghana continues to digitize critical services across government, finance, education, business, questions of where our data is stored, who governs it, and how it is protected have become more important than ever. At Smart Infraco, we believe that building a trusted, secure, and sovereign digital ecosystem starts with reliable local infrastructure. And today's conversation brings together leading voices who are shaping that reality. Before we dive deep, a few quick notes. The webinar will last approximately 90 minutes. Please use the Q&A session for our virtual followers to share your thoughts or questions during the session. We'll have a brief audience Q&A after the panel discussion. Now let's meet our panelists. So we are glad to be joined by exceptional panel of experts who are bringing rich perspectives of policy, infrastructure, and then user experience. I'll first of all want to introduce Mr. Robert Nesta Gemaji, who is our facility manager at the National Data Center managed by Smart Infraco. He has over 10 years of data center facility management, holds an MBA in project management, MA energy law, certified data center management professional, PMP, and Robert is currently the facility manager at the Smart Infraco Managed Data Center. Let's put our virtual hands together for Robert. Robert, you are warmly welcome.
Thank you, Richard.
All right. So we also have with us Mr. Dela Eje, who is the IT manager at the Student Loan Trust Fund. So Dela leads digital operations and data management at SLTF, one of the many public sector institutions hosting data locally with Smart Infraco. His practical insights into local hosting and service delivery, I believe, will be very invaluable and priceless to our conversations this afternoon. Dela, you are warmly welcome.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. And also with us is Mrs. Sylvia Apia. Sylvia is the CEO and lead consultant at Information Governance Solutions, a leading data protection and cybersecurity consultancy. She has over 25 years of experience spanning the UK and Africa. Sylvia is a recognized expert in data protection, cybersecurity, AI governance, and privacy management. We are thrilled to have you all. Sylvia, you are warmly welcome to join us in this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I believe that your smiles is going to bring a lot of impact to the people who are joining us today.
I
So
hope so. I hope
let's
so.
quickly move to some of the questions that we have. I would like to start off with Robert, who has had this experience in managing the data center. So, Robert, as a facility manager of the National Data Center, what operational measures are in place to ensure that data hosted locally is secure and always available?
Yeah, thank you again, Richard. Let me start by saying that in a data center ecosystem, there are standards in the industry, and Smart is committed to keeping all these standards, that is accepted globally in the industry. Here, we cannot talk about data sovereignty without, mentioning Smart. Smart has been doing a great job with the National Data Center. So we have a physical security system and access controls, when you are coming to the data center that you have to go through. We have some multiple layers of parameters, CCTVs across all our entry and exit points. We have strict access control and authorization systems. There are principles of least privileges, meaning that no one has unrestricted access to, be granted to specific places. Network engineer does not have access to all the places. A facility engineer may not have access to all the places. So you will see that there are multi-factor authentication, uh, at all levels of the data center. That will include the data halls, the electricals and mechanical, plants.
Okay.
And we have people who will escort, vendors who come to work on our facility. So when we put all these measures in place, we make sure that security is tight. Now, that's not the only thing for visibility, for accessibility and reliability. We also talk about power infrastructure and redundancy. To ensure this is available, we have power from a number of sources, okay, diverse sources, so that in the mix we are able to keep our power sources, up and running 247 without going down.
Okay.
So here at the smart managed data center, we have solar, we have gensets, and we have ECG. So all these come together, to make sure that the place is up and running.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So, what makes the national data centers infrastructure uniquely capable of supporting Ghana's data sovereignty agenda? Again, to you, Robert.
Yes, so like I said, every data center to be up and running, you are talking about power and cooling. Once your diverse power sources are okay, once your cooling is okay, you make sure that the human resource you have are well trained and they are capable of managing the facility you have. Your UPS system, your redundancies are in place. You are sure that you will keep your data, very well available to your users and your clients. And that's exactly what we do here at the Smart Managed Data Center, at NITA.
All right. So, Della, I would like to come to you. You've had experience using the National Data Center. The Student Loan Trust Fund hosts its data with the data center currently. What motivated your organization to make that decision?
Okay, thank you. Um, Student Loan Trust Fund. Initially, we looked at the idea of setting up our own data center, which would give us some full control and room to grow as our data services expanded. However, the cost of building and maintaining such a was a huge investment.
Okay.
So at that time, we had to look for an alternative. And looking for the alternative, we also had to look for something that's more sustainable and efficient. Uh, then the National Data Center was recommended. So we also had to make our um, investigations, and the National Data Center obviously became the choice for us because it had the right infrastructure, like Robert said, reliable power, cooling, security, and it was also equipped. It's in fact it's also equipped with the relevant expertise that manage the facility as well. Uh, Hosting our services there, well, we've had some benefits at the moment. It's a modern and secure data environment um,
Okay.
without the, and in fact, hosting our services there, we now don't have to be burdened with the heavy cost of running one ourselves. That gives us stability, security, and also great value. In fact, also whilst keeping our data safely in Ghana as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. I would like to go to Sylvia. Sylvia, you've been involved in data protection conversations, not just in Ghana, but in the UK and then I believe in Europe as well. I would like to find out from you how well do Ghana's current data protection laws align with the global standards such as the GDPR, and where do you see the biggest gaps and then opportunities that we could take advantage of over here?
Thank you, Richard. Before I look at the gaps, I think I need to establish some background into how the current standards such as GDPR, the Data Protection Act 2012 were all established.
Okay.
In the ecosystem of data protection, there is something called the Convention 108 Plus, and this is a convention that nation states will seek to look to adopt to create their own laws. And it's I have to say that the Ghana law was passed in 2012. GDPR was 2018. So for me, I actually say to my delegates when I train that, in fact, GDPR perhaps followed Ghana's law,
Okay.
um, because we were in 2012 and it's 2018 that GDPR came. And just to clarify a myth, GDPR only applies to protection or provision of data protection in terms of the privacy of European citizens, not the global or the world as we perceive.
Okay.
However, it is because of the amount of noise and the punitive nature of their fines that everybody aspire to GDPR. But Ghana's law, if we have to compare like for like, it compares very, very compatibly.
Okay.
It has all the basic principles that are found in Convention 108 that I alluded to earlier on. Also, all the principles that are enshrined in GDPR. However, there are some gaps, which is very aligned to the discussion we are having today. Data sovereignty, keeping Ghana's data in Ghana. Um, One of the biggest gaps, and I believe there is a consultation on a new bill
Okay.
of the acts going ongoing, and I'm happy to see that that has been included. It's the section that covers what we call international or cross-border transfer. So if we have to compare in terms of the principles, the rights that the law gives, it is very comparable. But it's perhaps its adoption, its compliance. I mean, everybody thinks data protection is new in Ghana, but actually we're over 10 years old. So we should be matured, but obviously we are not. So it compares very, very similar. The only exception and the only biggest gap is the international transfer, which is very similar because when we talk about data sovereignty, we are talking about data being kept here.
Okay.
However, there are other mechanisms that can be used when we transfer data across our borders. And I was quite happy to listen to both Robert and Della. Robert telling us all the technical measures and organizational measures that they have when you put your data in Ghana. So the Ghana Data Protection Act, if you really look at it and interpret it, it's very comparable, very, very comparable. The
Okay.
rights are the same, the principles are the same, but perhaps the terminology is used slightly different. But from a practitioner or a business perspective, in fact, if you comply with the Ghana law, you'll be complying with 99% of GDPR, with the exception of things like international transfer and things like data portability. But as we engage with businesses, as one of my business core functions, we educate businesses to follow best practice to put some measures in place for cross-border transfer.
Yeah. So, Sylvia, as a follow up to, I mean, what you've just informed us on, I would like to find out from your own perspective and with the experience that you've had dealing with clients both in the public and then the private sector, what does data sovereignty mean for Ghana's public and then private institutions? If you can do
Okay.
a bit of elaboration on that for us, I believe that it will be good for our listeners. So,
Okay. So data sovereignty, it's all about keeping our data here. And there are some countries like Morocco, China, who are very, very particular about it. But a lot of our clients that I come into contact with and businesses host their data outside. And the conversation normally is when you start talking about cross-border transfer or data sovereignty, keeping data within the shores or within the borders of Africa. Everybody thinks if you put it in the cloud, for example, in offshore or AWS and things like that, it is secure. But that is not all. If we are able to keep the data here, and I think one of the challenges is having the infrastructure, the technology to support, having businesses like Smart Infraco and others who are providing these hosting services. I think we need to make it widely used because everybody thinks if we keep our data outside, then that is the right thing. But for data sovereignty and the benefits or the risk around keeping data across our borders outweigh the benefits of keeping it here. Because if we put our data outside Ghana, I mean, yes, there are mechanisms. For example, there are countries that are known as adequacy or adequate where they have some measures in place. But it makes it difficult to control. It makes it difficult for us to benefit from the data set we are storing outside. I mean, in the last few days, there's been a lot of discussion on our health data being held outside. And I do not sit here and condone the fact that it's outside Ghana. But my question to them and to everybody is what measures are in place? And I can talk about some of the measures that we can put in place to ensure that even if it's not stored locally in terms of data sovereignty, what are the measures we can put across? And businesses currently, all the business that come across, very, very few actually store their data in Ghana because of some of the challenges that perhaps Dela explained that they have overcome. For example, in terms of availability, business continuity, they are assuring us that they have different sources of power. And so that can boost the confidence that business can keep their data here.
All right. Thank you so much. Della, in your initial answer to us, you gave a bit of background as to why you made a decision to host your data at the National Data Center. You said that initially you wanted to build your own data center in-house, but when you went through the process of finding out the cost involved in building and then managing it, and then you did a cost benefit analysis, you realized that it would be better for it to be hosted at the place. I would like you to do a bit of deep dive on that. From your own experience, how has hosting the data locally improved efficiency, compliance, and service delivery at the student loan and trust fund? If you can do a big bit of deep dive on that, I believe that that would be cool.
All right, thank you, Richard.
Yeah.
Um, basically, student loan, we we are a government institution, agency that provides financial assistance to students in our accredited tertiary institutions across Ghana. And each year we process thousands of applications and repayments, meaning that we handle quite a lot of personal and financial data. So security, system availability, and public trust are extremely important to us. And moving our systems to the National Data Center has been one of the rewarding decisions we've made. Um, with our applications now running in a professional data center environment, we have seen a boost in availability and performance. The systems are now running 24/7. We don't have to think about uh, power, backup power, and cooling and all that. Um, Students are now able to apply for their loans and make repayments at any time, anywhere they are, because availability has been assured. beyond the uptime and then the availability of the systems, we have also benefited from the data center secure redundant infrastructure, which gives us some peace of mind knowing that our systems are being backed up by reliable power, cooling, and efficient monitoring. Um, I also say that the move, like you said, um, cost cost came in the picture, and cost and benefit analysis that was done couldn't afford us to also build our own data center. So we had to go to the national data center. And I must say that operational cost since then, I would say, has improved at the front.
Okay, thank you. So let me come to Robert, who I'll describe in this case as our landlord. So Robert, many businesses usually underestimate the cost of downtime. From your own experience managing such a facility, what are the key factors that contribute to reliability and uptime in a tier three environment?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Richard. You know, um, businesses will underestimate, downtime. It is when it happens. That's when they get to know that, oh no, we don't have to joke about what, we've been having. I mean, when you have the uptime, you're happy. But the moment you go down, you will see the cost of, the downtime. Look, first, there should be a highlight, between theoretical design and operational discipline. And you see, the focus normally is on infrastructure, and then we overlook the human factors. What we do here at Smart is that we make sure the human, capacity is trained so well that most of the things are taken care of so that we don't have failure in our systems. So there is something we call single point of failure. We try as much as possible to eliminate these single points of failures. You see, so the people we have at the data center, they are trained to be able to, you know, take care of those single point of failures. Where, for instance, there is power from a particular place, there is a challenge with it. Quickly, they are able to contact vendors so that they work on it to give uptime. And this is a tier three data center. So we are supposed to work within a particular, set standards. So you realize that student loan, Daniel, when he comes here, we make sure that UPS are up, generators are up. We make sure all our vendors are up and doing. They come to check our power systems always. These are some of the plans we put in place to make sure that there are uptimes. Look, when you have a downtime, your business, your customers are angry. You cannot access a lot of your, information, and it causes a lot of frustration, and that's on us. So it's our duty to make sure that this kind of chaotic situations don't, arise in the first place. So most, of the time, we make sure, as much as possible, we make sure that there is availability of power, there is availability of cooling, there is availability of emergency, services that make sure that all our vendors are happy.
All right. Thank you so much, Robert. I believe that with what you have told us, let me just reach out to all our viewers and those who are listening to us that the message that has been passed on to me from Robert is that he's ready to host you all at the National Data Center. So if You are yet to be able to contract a business with Smart Infraco on your data hosting, either as a DR or maybe bringing your racks in there or on the cloud. I'm sure with the information that has been given to us, the data center is tier 3 certified by uptime. So please, just get yourself ready and then make sure that you put something within the conversation that is happening so that a team will contact you for us to be able to reach out to you. So now I'll come to Sylvia on maybe skills and policies. I believe that you've had a very expansive experience dealing on this side. So, what skills and policies do you believe will be essential for Ghana to strengthen its digital resilience and data trust? You've mentioned a lot of positives earlier on, but I would want to find out what skills or policies will be very, very needful if we are supposed to strengthen this digital resilience and data trust that I believe that maybe we've taken a journey on. So Sylvia, if you can hear me, you can just reach out and then tell us.
Okay. I think I will address it by looking at the sort of frameworks that Ghana can adopt. So we are looking at frameworks like standards, and policy implementation, adequacy or international transfer mechanisms, making sure there are adequate what we call technical measures. So, for example, security standards that we can adopt, making it mandatory or as a recommended approach to ensure that businesses will adhere to some of these things. So when we look at some of the measures that we can adopt in terms of policies, in Europe and in the wild world, there are mechanisms such as some countries being designated as adequate, which means those countries has been assessed to have, if you, I don't want to use the word adequate, but appropriate level of security, and maybe to put it further, interference with our data. So we need to, in terms of skills, build capacity in the country for professionals to understand, for businesses to appreciate the return on investment in adopting some of these standards and frameworks to ensure that even if you have to put your data out of Ghana, then some of these things are put in place. And when we look at cross-border mechanisms, which is some of the policies, currently there are what we call model clauses or standard contractual clauses that is adopted worldwide or Europe, which means any businesses bringing a third party or contracting a third party. So, for example, Smart Infraco, if IGS decides to host our data with you, you will become what we know as our processor. And so we need to adapt some of these policies or standards. So it means we need to have some sort of agreements known as model clauses with some clear clauses embedded in there. So, for example, ensuring that if we are going to put our data in smart infrastructure, and I believe you've got all the security measures, but we ensure that businesses will go a step further by understanding what is required. I mean, the Data Protection Act requires that all businesses comply. And although I said that we don't have the explicit requirements for international transfer in the Act, best practice means if you put your data out somewhere, even if it's within Ghana in terms of data sovereignty or in terms of using or hosting internally, we need to have some guidelines, some frameworks. There is a lot of ISO standards that we can adopt. For example, the Cybersecurity Directive mandates that certain critical national infrastructure organizations put certain things in place. Recently, the insurance industry also did the same. So we can adopt some of those directives that are mandating businesses to put in certain standards and framework. We can also use regulatory guidance, and so I'm very pleased that the new act is going to include international transfer. There's also the discussion about Emerging Technology Act, which will look at the AI data governance as a whole, data protection and security. And so these are all frameworks and policies that we can adopt. I think that the most pressing part is the adoption or the awareness within the country that we have a responsibility to ensure that Ghanaian citizen data, or indeed any person's data that we are processing, even if we are putting it into a data center, we are compliant, or we put in measures that will ensure that the data is protected accordingly. And I do believe, from what I've listened to my fellow panelists, that they have put things in place to ensure that these data are protected. But we need to do a lot more. It doesn't have to be a choice or for the business to decide whether I do it or not. These days, you cannot do business without people's information or data. And so we need to encourage and maybe put together policies that mandate organizations. And so the Data Protection Act is one of the regulative arms, the Cyber Security Act, and there's so many acts I could name, the Electronic Transaction Act, and so on and so forth. So these are the things we need to adopt. But just having these policies is not enough. We need to do a lot of capacity building and awareness so that businesses can see the return on investment and to do the right thing. This webinar is about data sovereignty and trust. Trust from who? Trust from your customers, trust from your employees, trust from your clients. And so one of the biggest app is actually the capacity building and the awareness to ensure that every business takes this serious, and every Ghanaian citizen can be assured that if they have to give their data to an organization to provide a service, that there is the element of trust that we can adopt. So policies, regulatory frameworks, standards, whether it's mandatory or not, I think are the best way to approach it.
Okay, so Sylvia, I mean, with what you've said, I think it takes me to the next question that I wanted to ask about how AI practices can be embedded into this national data frameworks, governance frameworks that we intend to be able to achieve. And you've
Okay.
mentioned that the act or the policy draft that is currently going around, the one on the emerging technologies, some way, somehow, probably maybe can be the beginning. But what next, or what other things can we do after probably maybe this policy or this is passed into an act? What else can we do to ensure that at least we are taking advantage to ensure that these AI practices, which are embedded in these policies, are something that we companies are benefiting, both the public side and then the private sector.
Okay, I think I'll start by outlining some of the fundamental ethical, and I like the word ethical because it's doing the right thing. It's about doing the right thing. It's about corporate responsibility. It's about social responsibility. And so adopting some of these basic principles into the national data governance framework. Ghana has a draft data governance framework, and it incorporates a lot of these things. And so adopting some of these principles, for example, explainability when it comes to AI and ethical AI, to be ethical and to be transparent in terms of ensuring that users or customers or businesses understand the use of such tools like AI into their frameworks, ensure there's fairness in their approach, that it's human centric, that there is technical robustness in terms of how we do things. And by adopting some of these frameworks into all the other frameworks that I've understood, I think Ghana can ensure that these frameworks bring the added assurance or trust. So it cannot be a silo approach in terms of data sovereignty or data governance. So, because governance embeds quite a lot. Governance is about the management and the control of the data, whether usability, whether individuals' data. And so, embedding some of these into our day-to-day activities, into our policy development. But we have to also make sure that we balance productivity against some of these frameworks and policy, and so much so that we don't stifle the development or stifle innovation in some of the things that AI and other emerging technologies can do. So it's about collaborating with the different agencies, adopting best practice internationally and nationally, and ensuring that like I just said, we don't uh, stifle or stifle productivity with this. So Ghana can learn from a lot of best practice. Now, I always say that we are at a good Africa on the whole at a good position because the Western world, the global north and south, they've done some of these things, and there have been lessons learned. So we are in a position to learn from some of these lessons and adopt, making sure it is applicable to our local way of doing things. So adopting some of these things, and when I talk about ethics, it's a good thing. Every business has a corporate responsibility or social responsibility. And so if we leverage from that perspective, I think by the time we bring all the pieces together, Ghana will find itself benefiting from some of these policies that we can bring together to ensure our data governance frameworks come together and give us the best out of the data sets that we have.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, Della, let me come to you. So, let's assume that probably maybe you are being picked as a mentor. Today, one of the things that excites me when I go to social media, maybe go to conferences and then engage is that we have a lot of young tech entrepreneurs that are coming up who are into various stuff that they are doing which probably needs hosting. So I would want you to share as a mentor to these maybe young students, young entrepreneurs concerning they making decisions probably to choose a hosting partner. From your experience, what are some of the key trust and security considerations that your team evaluated when they were choosing the hosting partner? I'm putting you on the spot, but if you can share maybe some of the best practices, some of the key things that you considered, I believe that will be helpful to this cohort of people who are listening to us. So, Dela, over to you.
All right, thank you. Um, for me, I would say three things. Um, First, security. Um, Two, reliability, and then the third one is accountability.
Okay.
When I say security, earlier Robert said they have the security features and installations to guarantee that the data center is secure, and not everyone has um, like there are levels of security assigned to each and every staff of the data center. So security is very important. And then when we also look at reliability, we've spoken about um, backup power, cooling systems, and also the people that monitor the systems. It's very uh, important, I would say, in terms of reliability, where you have your systems running 24/7. You assure your customers that your system is up and running. There are no downtime on your systems.
All right.
And
Thank you
then
so
we
much.
also look at the accountability.
Okay.
Accountability, when we look at, but we talk about the support system. And then when you are looking out for a hosting partner, support system is very important. When you have a hosting partner that doesn't offer much support, you end up being you find yourself hanging when there's a system challenge, and you need the support of them to help your system back up. And so, most importantly, we wanted a responsive local team people we could reach out directly when the support is needed. So, in fact, Robert can attest to the fact that before we made the decision of moving our systems to the data center, we had to come to his place, had a tour at the data center, I think more than twice, if Robert can remember. So for me, I think security, reliability, and accountability are the three most important things one should look out for when making a decision for a hosting partner.
All right, so over to you. This cohort who prompted me to ask this question. So security, reliability, and then accountability. I'll call it SRA. So kindly take note of that the next time that you are planning to choose a hosting partner. These three key things should be part of the things that you consider. So, Robert, let me come to you for probably your last question for this round. What would you say to organizations still hosting their data outside Ghana about the importance of bringing it home?
Yeah, thank you again, Richard, and my co-panelists. You know, you cannot talk about data sovereignty when you are having your data outside the country. You know, um, you create a lot of jobs here when you bring the data here. We have the infrastructure, we have the support. You know, Daniel talked about remote, support, and we pride here at Smart. We pride ourselves in remote support. Once we are able to authenticate where the call is coming from, we support you remotely. You needn't, travel all the way here, to um, take care of very little things. So we help you. So look, the infrastructure is here, okay? The experienced hands are here. So why do you want to keep your data outside Ghana, where there can be, these geopolitical strifes out there that can affect where your servers are? You don't know where they are. You know, here there is secure foundation for national systems. You see, there is unmatched security, there is reliability, there's reachability, and it's available. You can easily get to where your service provider is. So why would you want to have, your data somewhere in Europe or a place you don't know, where sometimes you can, be on call, the people are not available. Assuming, let me just make this example, assuming your data is hosted somewhere in Ukraine where, the war is. I mean, if the place is gone, it's gone. Okay. But here, there is stability, there is peace, and everything is here. So I would urge everybody, I would urge organizations, I would urge MDAs, to come for a tour. Come to the National Data Center managed by Smart, come for a tour. Let's take you through. And you'll be amazed the amount, of experience we pride ourselves in. You'll be amazed of the infrastructure. And you will see that probably a lot of people were just wasting time hosting their data elsewhere. There are a number of organizations that, like Sylvia said, they are building their own silos. And so they have their data in their premise, they are going to other places to. No, the infrastructure is here. And this is one of the biggest data centers in Ghana. The infrastructure is up to task with the human resource. So I'm just urging everybody, if you are out there, you are a business, look, come to the National Data Center managed by Smart, come for a tour, and you'll be amazed. You will not, regret it at all. Thank you, Richard.
All right, thank you so much. So, to those who are listening and following us, you are not left out. Kindly make use of the chat box and let us hear from you. So, over here, I see Kwame Opokuado making a point about the governance, where he said that the use of AI itself has to be governed effectively so that factors such as bias, transparency, and accuracy are considered ethically. Thanks a lot, Kwame, for your contribution. I see that Kwabena Amfo has also stated that how does keeping Ghanaian, okay, he is asking a question. How does keeping Ghanaian data within our borders contribute to national security and digital independence? So this is a question that is coming from one of our listeners. I would want us to Sylvia to help us address that before we maybe I give her her last question for the session.
Okay, thank you, Richard. And I think I can see where the question is coming from. He wants to know how does keeping our data within Ghana contribute to national security? And I just want to draw everybody's attention to the USA. We all know that if your data goes even in transit in some countries, they can intercept it. And therefore, if our critical information about Ghanaian citizens, whatever it may be, it's kept outside and there are no adequate measures. I think I need to be clear that putting Ghanaian data outside, it's not a bad thing, but it's better if we have it locally so that we can govern it. Because we can still have it locally if we don't have the right governance around it, in terms of the right security, in terms of the right structure. So if we have it here, I think we have been told how much we put in place in Smart Infraco to ensure that if we should use your data set, it is secure, you have backup servers, so if one should fail, there's another. And so keeping it here alone, first of all, it means if there is disturbance in another jurisdictions, then there is not the risk of another country or another jurisdiction accessing or you know taking control of our data. And so keeping it here, it's a first step, the right direction in terms of keeping it here and controlling our data. But it doesn't go without saying that by virtue of keeping it here doesn't mean our data is secure. The same way is if you keep it outside other jurisdictions that are perceived to be very secure or advanced, there are things that still needs to be done. And so for me, the discussion is around how do we ensure data is kept securely, whether it is kept within our local borders or outside. But it's much better if it's here that we can control, we can secure it here. And obviously, if for example, if another country, another location has all Ghanaian citizen data about, for example, basic demographic details. I mean, there's so much that can be done with it. I mean, there's a lot of cyber crimes that are happening. It's because they get people's data. So keeping it here, it's a step in managing the risk around keeping our data. And that's my take on that.
Okay. I don't know. Do we have any other contribution from either Della or Robert on this question? Okay. If there's none, then
Yeah, yeah,
Sylvia.
yes.
Okay.
Let me add to what Sylvia said. So when we keep our data in here, it's also an economic empowerment and it's also strategic empowerment. You see, it's a national security issue. You create a lot of jobs here for people who will be, working around all these, data centers and co. So, keeping the data in Ghana, helps a lot of Ghanaians. Thank you.
All right. So Sylvia, to your last question, you have contributed a lot to the continental initiatives like the Smart Africa Data Governance Blueprint. How can Ghana leverage regional collaboration to enhance its data sovereignty agenda? They say that currently we are in a global village. We all saw the issue about CloudStrike just some few years ago when they had issue and how, I mean, the whole world came to a halt just because of an issue that was happening within America. So, I mean, with the experience that you've had, I mean, putting this kind of blueprint together, can you suggest how Ghana can leverage on such regional collaboration to enhance its data sovereignty agenda?
Okay. I think I will start by outlining the three pillars of our data strategy, which is the Smart Africa Blueprint. It has three main pillars: the regulatory framework, which looks at all the various acts that I've mentioned, including copyright, data protection, and all that. It also has technical infrastructure. So, again, very, very in line with what we are discussing: data centers, data capability, the quality of the data, the usage of the data, how good did the or the value or the economic benefit from the data we are keeping, and also looking at cross-border mechanisms. But I think what Ghana can do, or what Ghana could benefit, is leveraging on other countries. So I cited Morocco. I'm using Morocco because it's Africa. I had the privilege of visiting a data center, and I think it's, from what I've heard from Smart Infraco, very similar. And so we can collaborate in terms of international cooperation with our peer countries and learn from what they are doing. I mean, we need a lot of smart structures in Ghana. I don't think if all businesses should want to store their data in Ghana, we have enough data centers. So we can collaborate with other countries through international cooperation, have agreements so that we can use some of these infrastructure between nation states. So when you look at the pillars that it's in the strategy, we are looking at the framework, and so not just use our framework in silo, but adopt some of the best practice and learn from our peer countries, so that we can adopt and use the benefits. I keep talking about lessons learned. Some of these countries have also gone ahead and done and put data sovereignty policies. We haven't really enacted data sovereignty, but it's embedded in a lot of our laws or some of the bills that are being put together. But we can look at what is out there, and I think international cooperation, it's one of the key things that we can actually adopt and work with each other so that we can utilize the infrastructure in some of the countries, and also our own infrastructure here. We can begin to use those to the benefit of the whole economy, and for businesses also to have the trust and confidence that they can actually host their data nationally. When we talk about data sovereignty, there's so many benefits that we could discuss. And so for me, I think a lot of collaboration with our peer countries, international cooperation, and using infrastructure that are perhaps more advanced in certain countries than perhaps ourselves, leveraging that to ensure that we get the benefits from the data sovereignty. And it doesn't go without saying that one of the most important things is to ensure that the quality of our data, if we are going to have things like a data market where data is stored, where businesses or key stakeholders can utilize, we need to look at um, collaborating with other nations.
Sure. Succinct and on point. Thank you so much, Sylvia. So, Della, you are a public sector expert. I'll ask the last question before we take the questions that's coming into our chat box, and then also give room for our virtual viewers and then listeners to also send in their contributions. So, how important is data sovereignty for public sector agencies that manage sensitive citizen information? I'm sure this week, the whole of this week, there's been a lot of conversations about our health information data and how it's been treated and stuff like that. You coming from the public sector, I mean, can you elaborate a bit on the importance of how to manage some of this sensitive citizen information?
Okay. Thank you very much, Richard. For us, it's extremely important. For us at student loan, the data we have, we consider it a national asset. So keeping it in Ghana here ensures it's protected under our own laws and remains under government control. Um, when data is hosted locally, it's easier to manage, audit, and also protect. It also gives citizens some kind of assurance that their personal information is secured in their own country. For example, like you said, lately this week, data issues, health data issues, and I quite picked something from the issue where they said the data is in the hands of a third party and they could turn the system on and off at any time. And that isn't something that it's very good for this country. Once the data is sitting here, like I mentioned earlier, it's easier to manage and it's easier to protect. And also, if there are any issues, audit that data. So, in short, I would say data sovereignty will build trust and independence in this country and offer some kind of national confidence in our citizens. Uh, and for us at SLTF, we are proud to play that part by keeping our data in Ghana here. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So, in wrapping up, I have some few questions for our group reflection. And this one is not going to anyone in particular. I mean, I'm going to give all the three questions that I have, and then, I mean, we can pick and choose which of the questions to be able to answer as we wrap up our conversation, and then go into the chat box and listen to what our viewers and listeners are saying. So the first question is, how can Ghana strike the right balance between accessibility, security, and sovereignty in managing national data? So that's Q1. What collective steps from policy to infrastructure to user behavior are needed to build lasting digital trust in Ghana? And then how do you see the role of smart infraco and partners evolving in advancing data sovereignty in the next 5 years? So these are the three questions. I don't know who is going first for us. Is there another that says that ladies first?
Not on this occasion, but what I have to say is you have to do the question one at a time because it's
Okay.
well,
So
if you do the first one, I can
the
answer
first
easily.
question is, how can Ghana strike the right balance between accessibility, security, and sovereignty in managing national data?
I think at the beginning I did talk about ensuring that regulating or following data sovereignty doesn't impact productivity. What we need to do is to bring all stakeholders together, understand their needs, and then put together policies that are are implementable. I think this is it. Usually we bring policies and regulatory frameworks, but the biggest question is, are they implementable? So for Ghana to strike the balance, we need to look at all the key stakeholders and understand the balance between all the areas and ensure that if we are to bring in policy, it doesn't affect productivity. So, for example, having a data market where data is done, it's kept. If we have to make that data available to stakeholders, for example, if you have a data market or a center or somewhere where we've got all health data, how can industries in that area be able to access? So you talked about accessibility. How can we allow such industry to access the data? What mechanisms can we put in place? And it goes back to frameworks and guidelines and procedures and making sure there are mechanisms to govern. So when we talk about govern or governance, we're looking at how we manage it. What are the roles? Whose responsibility is it? So, as somebody with race background, I always look at what we call a racy index, who is responsible for the data itself, who is accountable. We talked about accountability, who is consulted, the stakeholders, and who is informed. Bringing all these dimensions together will ensure that we balance accessibility so we are able to allow stakeholders or businesses or government to access the data that is needed, but at the same time ensuring that we put in the right frameworks to guard or secure the data, make sure the right standards are in place so that the data is used for its main purpose. So for me, to balance that, it's about bringing all stakeholders together, understanding each areas and concerns, and then ensuring that any policy or standard that we are bringing out or adopting does not inhibit the productivity of any of the stakeholders.
Okay.
So, for example, it doesn't stop citizens from accessing their data, and it doesn't stop businesses from using the data for their business, and it doesn't stop innovation as well. So, that is my take on that.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So, the second question is, what collective steps from policy to infrastructure to user behavior are needed to build lasting digital trust in Ghana? Who will take it up for us? Della, will you want to take it up for us?
Okay. So if you can come with the question.
So, what collective steps from policy to infrastructure to user behavior are needed to build lasting digital trust in Ghana? I mean, this could come from top of your head. I mean, with your maybe the experience that you build in the market.
Okay. So just like Sylvia said, policy, um, everything is driven by policy. So I believe that with the stakeholder engagement, whatever policies that may come up, um, like you said, there should be some balance between the stakeholders, what works for each stakeholder and what doesn't work. So a balance needs to be strike between the stakeholders to have a standardized policy that
Okay,
will govern the ecosystem.
okay, all right. Thank you so much. And then obviously, then Robert, you are going to answer the last one for us.
Yeah.
How do you see the role of smart infraco and partners evolving in advancing data sovereignty in the next 5 years?
So let me say this. The National Data Center is the physical manifestation of Ghana's data sovereignty. Okay, without it, it's as if Ghana is a tenant in another country, digital house. So subject to rules and vulnerabilities of where they are. So with it, Ghana is the owner and master of its digital destiny. See, so smart, what we can do in partnership with others. Let's keep the road shows going. Webness like this very important. Let's allow universities to come for tour, you know, create the awareness that keeping our data here gives us that power, that control. Accessibility is here. So it's like we need to continue the road shows. We need to continue webinars like this. We need to take it out there to people to understand that look, the infrastructure is here, we can do it, and we are doing it. Right. So in the next 5 years, let's take it upon ourselves, to go out there, trumpet it everywhere in the tertiary institutions, to the organizations, to the MDAs that look, we are well and capable of keeping our own data here, and I am sure it will be well. Thank you, Richard.
Excellent, excellent. So now we'll take some few Q&A, I mean, from our audience. So, Luis, if you are available, kindly project a few. Let's read them and then let's see how, I mean, we deal with it. So, okay. So, Kwabna says that how can regulatory bodies collaborate with private players to strengthen trust in Ghana's data ecosystem? How can regulatory bodies collaborate with private players to strengthen trust in Ghana's data ecosystem? Sylvia, can you help us with that?
Okay.
Yeah.
I think an interesting question in terms of how can regulatory bodies collaborate with private players. I think there is a lot of benefit in doing that. For example, accreditation with private service providers in the data system, funding for bodies to do the research and to bring in best practice and to ensure that the system or the data that we have in Ghana, we are looking at it. I mean, when we talk about trust or the Ghana data ecosystem, it has so many dimensions. I mean, we mentioned AI at the beginning, and there's a lot of data that you need to be able to train AI systems for them to predict, as we know, human like or real solutions. And so by collaborating with the private players, we bring in best practice, we learn from what they done. They have, some of them have some investment that the government can actually work together without bringing so much regulatory guidance, so that businesses or the private sector cannot actually function because they are burdened. A lot of businesses see compliance as another burden, in terms of putting things in place, but they can also see the benefit of it. So it's, for me, we've talked about collaborating internationally, but we need to work with the private sector as well, who may have investment, who may have the skills, who may have the experience that we can leverage on, and then make sure by working together that then people have trust in our system, and also through capacity building. I think the biggest gap in all these, whether we have frameworks, whether we have regulation, is the awareness of you and I as citizens. So capacity building, if we work with the private sector to educate the nation, through academia, through research, then the level of trust will arise or rise, and people will begin to trust the system, that our data has some level of security or assurance around it.
Excellent. Excellent. Luis, can we take the next? So we have Festa Concrete Products. Oh, that's great. To have a company that is following, it means that some good job is being done by our panelists. So he's asking that what are the biggest risks if Ghana fails to prioritize data sovereignty? What are the biggest risks if Ghana fails to prioritize data sovereignty?
Yeah, let me say something about this.
Yeah, sure.
Look, like I said, we become tenants to others, okay? So we have everything here to keep our data here. Why do you want to send it out? Economic value. We pay people out there to keep this data, okay? If you were keeping it here, the money will be here. You create economic value here. So if we fail to keep the data here, you are just a tenant to others, and you keep on paying monies, you keep on sending money, out to people out there. So it's best to keep the data here, especially when the environment is ripe for you to put the data here.
All right.
Richard, if I may say something.
Sure, definitely.
Okay. I think for me, the biggest risk is not about data sovereignty. The biggest risk is about securing our data wherever it may be. And
Yeah.
so, even if Ghana fails to implement data sovereignty, the one of the priorities we must have is we must make sure there are mechanisms or structures in place to protect our data, whether it is in transit or at rest. And so, whether it is in India or it's in South Africa or it's Ghana, the biggest risk is about managing and having control of our data and being able to have it when we need it in terms of availability. If we don't do data sovereignty, it doesn't mean that in itself it's a bigger risk. Yes, there are risks, but the biggest risk is about being able to protect our data wherever it may be. For me,
Yeah.
I think that is what it is.
Okay. All right. So the next question is from Hadija Abdullah. Thanks a lot for joining us. So, in practical terms, how does data localization differ from data sovereignty? In practical terms, how does data localization differ from data sovereignty?
Okay. So for data localization and sovereignty, there could be a couple of differences. So for data localization, okay, we can keep the data local, but a lot of the time, although the main data is kept locally, sometimes the backup is not kept local. Whereas when we look at sovereignty, we are looking at the ownership. We are looking about at the accountability of the data. And so it's not just that we keep it local. That means it is secure. But the sovereignty is a lot big. It means we adhere to it. We cherish the data. We respect the data. And so sovereignty is about being proud of what we have, if you like, rather than just keep it local without having any control. So for me, those are the differences. So we can have it locally, but still not have the governance around it, not having the security. But sovereignty, we are proud. We put mechanisms to make sure not only do we keep it secure, but we actually protect it and make sure we have mechanisms or we have structures in place to ensure that the data remains here and we get the benefit out of it. Sovereignty, some sort of accountability, some pride in it, and that's the difference rather than keeping local. So keeping local for the sake of it versus keeping local because we want to benefit from the use of the data we are keeping here and also to manage or mitigate some of the risk if it's outside, if you like, because some of the data are kept locally, but you find that the backup is outside and it's not, just about data localization.
All right. Um, I think the next point, some way, somehow ties into what Sylvia has already addressed, or will you want to maybe give something more concerning it? It's coming from Hadija again. She says that I want to know the main reason why government is concerned about data localization. Is it mostly about privacy or economic control? And I believe that's been
Yes.
succinctly addressed in the feedback that Sylvia gave. Will you want to add anything to it, Sylvia or Robert?
What I would say is when we talk about privacy, I
Yeah.
think privacy is a right that is enshrined in data protection laws. And we started by talking about cross-border transfer. And so to make sure that the individual's data is protected and their privacy respected, sovereignty or data localization is one way of making sure that our data as Ghanaian citizens are processed within the borders. So yes, for privacy, but also I wouldn't say for economic control, for economic benefits, because having the data here doesn't necessarily mean that it will be controlled by the government. I mean, we have our data sitting outside. If we look at what we've been discussing this week, it doesn't mean that if it's outside and if the agenda of the government is to control it, putting it here will make it any easier. But it's about the benefits around it. It's about respecting the privacy. And I spoke about the current act not having international transfer, but individual, you and I, Hadija and myself, and everybody listening, and everybody, there are rights under the data protection law saying that if our data is going to be processed outside the country, we need to guide it, we need to protect it. So it's not about control, it's about protecting our interests, it's about respecting our privacy.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So soon, we've come to the end of our session. Would like to say a very big thank you to the audience for joining the important discussion and to our panelists. I would like to first of all say a very big thank you to Mrs. Sylvia Apia, Information Governance Services. She's a data protection cybersecurity expert. Thanks a lot for coming by and then sharing your contribution with us. I'll also like to say a very big thank you to Mr. Robert Nesta Gemaji, who is the facility manager at the National Data Center, which is being managed by Smart Infraco. And then to Mr. Dela Ej from the Student Loan Trust Fund. We appreciate the time that you've shared with us and sharing various important insights with the team. Today's discussion reinforces one clear message. Data sovereignty is not just about storage, it's about control, compliance, and then national trust. As Martin Fraku, we are proud to power Ghana's data sovereignty agenda by providing secure, reliable, and locally hosted infrastructure for both public and private institutions. We look forward to continuing this conversation as we build a truly digital first Ghana. And I would like to leave you with a thought. I always, from my readings, what I think the next, if there's going to be a next world war, it's not going to be about acquisition of land space again, but it's something that is going to center around big data, managing of big data, who has control, who has security over it, who has compliance, and how people are able to leverage on this data and these insights to be able to build economic power. So I'm very, very thankful to all of you for joining us. I'm sure we are going to meet again next time in the next webinar. So thanks to you all. Yeah,
Thank
okay.
you.
I've just been alerted that there is something that has just come in. Somebody has just sent in a message that price. While we were talking about data, we are talking about data sovereignty. I think the main issue is the cost involved. What is Smart Infraco and the government doing to ensure the cost of hosting data here becomes relatively cheaper than hosting it outside? Currently, it is cheaper to host data outside than to host it here with businesses making economic decisions. The cost will always play a huge role. I think I would want to be able to have a conversation with this listener because I don't know whether whatever you are putting across is something that is maybe grounded in fact. But I can say that Smart Infraco is quite flexible, and when it comes to conversations around having your information stored at our data center and the price that you are talking about. So if you can hear me, kindly send us a private message and we'll get a team to engage with you for us to take the conversation from there. But thank you all. We appreciate you joining us. And I wish you all a very fruitful weekend. Thank you. And God bless.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.